Welcome to Indiana Basketball Weekly post-game show on the Grueling Truth Sports Network. The Indiana Basketball Weekly show is brought to you by MyBookie.ag. Make sure you go to the Grueling Truth page, click on the MyBookie.ag banner, and you get up to a $1,000 free bonus on your first deposit. Also brought to you by SeatGiant, which you can go to SeatGiant.com and get a 10% bonus or 10% off on your ticket order if you type in the code LEGEND. I'm your co-host for the show, Mike Goodpaster. Right now, I'd like to welcome in my other co-host, former Big Ten champion. Well, I guess he's still a Big Ten champion. It was just a few years ago. Collin Hartman. How you doing, Collin?
Could be better. But I'm still alive.
All right, so Collin's still alive, so everything's good there. Cole, Hanna, our Indiana basketball beat writer, you still alive?
I'm still alive. I'm still kicking it. I'm doing pretty good.
All right. And from KentSterling.com and the Kent Sterling Show, who else would it be? Kent Sterling. How you doing, Kent?
I'm doing terrible. This is just an awful day. Going down 20 and trying to fight back like that. Why the hell didn't these guys play like that the first 32 minutes of the game, for God's sake?
Well, I think this is what we saw all year, though, Kent. I mean, very rarely, except for the last few games, did they ever put 40 minutes together. And I think when you get to a one-and-done situation, usually you revert to what you were.
And they sure did. And Devontae Green, chief among them. How many times have you ever seen a guy go 8 of 10 from beyond the arc and still annoy the living hell out of you for 40 minutes?
Yeah, there's a couple turnovers there, Collin, that really killed this team. The one that stands out to me is I think they were down 5 with around 2 minutes left, and inadvertently he just throws the ball right to Ohio State. And it's kind of Devontae Green. He looks like Michael Jordan half the time, and the rest of the time, I don't know what he looks like. I mean, it's like he has mental lapses or something.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, it's tough because you have a guy who, scores an overwhelming majority of your points, relatively. Everybody else scoring, and then he's helping you on that front, but at the same time, he's, making dumb plays in crucial times. So it's hard to, it's what we've been dealing with all year. You get good Devontae, you get bad Devontae. Normally you get great Devontae all game and bad Devontae all game. But we got a little bit of great Devontae and a little bit of bad Devontae in this game. And it was a very, very inopportune times.
Yeah, and Cole, when I look at this stat sheet, there's a couple things that stand out to me, and I think you're probably going to say the same thing, but what stands out to you?
Yeah, I think the big one is the turnovers. 17 turnovers is too much. Ohio State finishes the game 24-6 advantage in points off turnovers. That's not going to get the job done. We talked about that a little bit pregame last night. Just, Ohio State can force teams into turnovers, and IU's been much better at that recently, and they were not very good with that today. The big thing to me is I know it ended up looking pretty from a three-point percentage, but I just felt like, especially in that first 30 minutes, they settled big time. They were taking a lot of threes. That's what Ohio State wanted them to do, and they pretty much played right into Ohio State's hands. And,
yep.
Yeah, that's why they looked bad for 30 minutes. They got a little hot there then and hit shots, but for the first 30 minutes, they couldn't hit the broadside of the barn. So
yeah, and when I look at this, Kent, to me, it looked like Ohio State clogged the lane, selling out to take away all driving lanes, which makes the kick out much tougher, and it makes it tougher to get the ball to Juwan Morgan. And I think what we talked about last night was true because Ohio State set the tone of this game. It was a physical game, and Indiana just looked uncomfortable during this entire game.
I really thought that this was at least to the point where Ohio State was up by 20. I thought it was a master class by Chris Holtman, right? It seemed like every shot that they thought they could live with, Indiana took. Justin Smith taking all kinds of crazy shots early in the game, and then Devontae Green jacking up. You know what? He only missed 2 threes. So you can't get too upset with him, but it was kind of like, okay, you know what? We're going to let these guys shoot. If we get beat by Devontae Green and Justin Smith, we're going to live with it, but it's not going to be Romeo, and it's not going to be Juwan getting off. It's going to be the guys who we want to shoot the ball, shooting the ball, and I thought that that's what happened.
Yeah, and Colin, when I look at this, the thing that drives me nuts about Langford is I think the kid's a hell of a player. I just think a lot of times he kind of lets the game come to him, and you never really see him try to force it, which isn't good for most people. But I think a player of his caliber, at some point, I'd love to see him just try to take the game over.
Yeah, and I feel like we saw him do that, early on in the season. And I agree with you. I think, especially with his talent and the way that he can finish around the rim, I would love to see him do that more. I think we'd win a lot more games if he would just, have that killer mentality and take over the game, like you said. I don't think we saw that very much at the end of the season, and really when things are going bad, I don't know, I feel like he kind of went away.
Yeah, and the thing that stood out to me, and Kent touched on this a little bit with Coach Holtzman, OSU seemed to really run well-executed sets, and it just seemed like Indiana never could do that. Kent?
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. Absolutely. That's what they did. And Indiana, they got impatient. They lost their discipline. And as a result, they were down 20 points. And Ohio State, I'll tell you what, Caleb Wesson, for a kid who hadn't played in a while, I thought he played great basketball throughout that game. He was good defensively, better defensively than I thought he was going to be. And then on the offensive end, he really, I thought, caused havoc. He's just a big old body. And when Deron Davis got into foul trouble, that really turned ugly for Indiana.
Yeah, and the thing that struck me, especially with the guards, I think Indiana's guards are better players, Colin, but Ohio State's just got some big-ass guys playing guard.
And they have the last, 5 years with, they've had big guards. And I think that it really attributes when you have long, lengthy guards like that, being able to pressure our smaller guys like Rob and, be more athletic than them and, make their entry passes harder and get in the passing lanes and everything like that, and post passes. It goes a long way, and that's why I could kind of reference Syracuse here. They always have long guards, and that's why they can run that 1-3-1. But Ohio State does it, in a man-to-man sense, and it really has an effect on the smaller guards. And we saw it tonight with the immense amount of turnovers that we've had.
Yeah, and I think the old adage, Cole, you are what your record says you are, was proven out today.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a very fair statement. It's a frustrating way to end the season, but, I guess to take it from an optimistic approach, they've fought back just to get to this point. So, I think maybe we got a little bit too high in this team after they strung some good games together, but I just think they ran into a team that was a little bit more well-rounded today than they were.
Yeah, because I'll tell you, on social media, Kent, after the one game Tennessee had, I thought that they legalized marijuana in Indiana from all the people who were trying to say he was the greatest point guard they've ever seen in an Indiana uniform.
Yeah, absolutely. And he didn't play great today, but he's a freshman. He's going to be up and down. And, that's life in the big city. Bright lights, big stage, whatever the hell it is in the Big Ten. He just didn't measure up today. I thought that the guy who did, and I'll go back to it one more time, and that's Chris Holtman. And Chris Holtman could have been had by Indiana when they hired Archie Miller, and they didn't go get him. And you know what? I'm not convinced that Archie's not the right guy. He may be exactly the right guy, but Chris Holtman is one of those guys that I look at, and I do a little bit of comparison shopping through the rearview mirror, and I got to tell you, I wouldn't mind having Chris Holtman on the bench for Indiana on a day like today.
Yeah, but I can also tell you this, and Colin, I'll let you touch on this. It's a lot different going to be the basketball coach at Ohio State and going to be the basketball coach at Indiana, since Ohio State, the football team's the main thing, and in Indiana, I don't even think they have one.
Yeah, there's a lot more pressure that comes with that. That's for sure. A lot higher expectations. I mean, geez, we've been here. Coach Miller's been here for 2 years, and people are already calling for his job.
No, I'm not calling for his job. I'm just saying that Holtman is a guy that
I know that.
He could have said, hey, you know what? This is a guy who can coach. He goes to Ohio State. They go to the NCAA 2 years in a row with, I guess things were a little bit better off for them than Holtman thought when he took the job. But this is a bit of a rebuild too, and to just go lock, stock, and barrel behind Archie, I think is kind of myopic.
Right, I understand that.
Yeah, and we could all sit there and say, what if we had this guy or what if we had this guy, because everybody knows. I know Chris Mack personally. I wish Chris Mack was the coach because we could have him on right now, but they would still be winning. But that's just my opinion. But I think Archie Miller, I think the biggest problem is this, Collin and Cole, and I brought this up like a month ago, is I think that right now, I don't think, and actually I heard Kent on his show today, which you hear on thegruelingtruth.net, bring this up too. And that is, he needs to build a culture, and he needs to not worry about getting 5-star players. He needs to worry about getting guys that fit the system he wants to play.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree. Obviously, I agree with that. It's all about culture. It's always about culture. And when you don't recruit to a culture and you don't have a culture, you're going to have the kind of wild swings and seasons that Crean had and now that Archie's kind of having. And that's the way it goes. Culture is a big deal for me. I think it's that point of differentiation that kind of flattens out the rough spots.
Yeah. Collin?
And I can elaborate on that a little bit. It's like, it kind of goes back to the fan base a little bit. All the fan base was mad that all the top talent was leaving Indiana. Well, it doesn't matter if you're getting the top talent if you're winning games. All that Indiana fans want 5 stars. They want this. They want that. Nobody's going to care. I think this can, trickle down to Coach Miller. Nobody's going to care if you're winning games and you have all 3-star recruits. Nobody's going to care. But all the fans in our fan base, we put so much pressure on the staff to get the best players and 5-star this, 5-star that. Everybody's looking at those rankings and ratings, and everybody cares about that and gets caught up in that. And kind of reiterating what you guys are saying, if you guys have a bunch of 3-star players that the culture is phenomenal and everybody does their job and they're winning games, everybody's going to shut up and just, let the team go as they've gone.
Yeah.
I think that's the big thing that fans can focus on is just because coaches feel that. They feel the pressure of getting this guy or that guy, but they need to get the right guys that are going to play their role and play their role for the team and mesh well. Because you can't just go chase 5 stars all day long. It's not going to work out. It's not sustainable. Yeah,
and with that being said, he's only had 2 recruiting classes. And I think that you have the right point guard in Rob Finney. I expected to see a lot more out of Demazi Anderson this year, though, and it looked like just from the start he didn't have a whole lot of confidence, Cole.
Yeah, Demazi's really just not gotten a lot, opportunity to really show much, and that's partly because when he did get opportunities, he didn't really, perform up to expectations. Defensively, I know Archie was really not satisfied with what he was getting there. And like you, Mike, I kind of thought that would be a guy that could come in and help him because, especially when you have a team that lacks shooting that IU has, at various points of this season. And, Demazi was kind of billed as this really good shooting player that can come in and help him out in the perimeter, but, he just was never really able to do that.
Yeah, so when we look at this, Kent, you pumped up for the NIT if they make it?
I keep watching this damn thing, the Big Ten tournament, and I hate it. Like to its core. I hate this tournament.
Yeah.
The event's always been a disappointment. All but once the Indiana had made it to the finals, and what have we lost? In 22 tournaments, we've lost 22 times. I hate this, but at least with the NIT, we got a shot. Maybe we can move on. And I think, and maybe Collin can speak to this a little bit, you get an extra 2.5 weeks of practice, and that's got to be a good thing, right?
Yeah, it's a good and a bad thing in my opinion. I hate the tournament. I can't stand it. I just do. I think that the regular season carries a whole lot more weight, just because that's a bigger picture for, a whole encompassed season. Teams can ride the wave, and some teams can get hot right now in the tournament and win and, mess up brackets and stuff like that. But I don't know. I don't like the tournament at all.
Yeah, but the problem is this, Collin. Without a tournament, IU probably doesn't have a chance to get this win to get in.
Right, and that's what I said. Whenever we did that show, was it last night or 2 nights ago? It was last night, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it was.
But like there's times like these where we need the tournament to get in. So you're grateful for it, but majority of the time it is not good because we have never performed well ever. And so it's frustrating.
So is that a lack of coaching in a one and done situation since 2000 or 1998 or whenever they started this godforsaken tournament?
Well, I mean, I don't think so. You had the 2002 team that went all the way to the national championship, so I don't think that.
Collin, how old were you when that happened?
I was born in '94, so I was what, 8?
Exactly. So I think the LA IU coach. I think the LA IU coach with a winning record in the Big Ten tournament is Mike Davis, isn't it, Kent?
Yep, that's right.
Yeah, where's he at now again?
Crapping on Mike Davis, right?
Actually, last
year. Oh, my God. Mike Davis this, Mike Davis that. Mike Davis, as it turns out, was pretty damn good.
Well, and Mike Davis last year, Collin, was in the NCAA tournament with Texas Southern, which is something Indiana hadn't been in what, 3 or 4 years?
Yeah, the last time we went was my junior year.
Yeah, so.
Which was, 3 years ago?
Yeah, so it's been a while. And are we to a point then, and Cole, you're on campus there, are we to a point where this team better be in the tournament next year, or Archie's going to have a hot seat?
Oh, yeah. I mean, if he misses the tournament next year, I think you can really argue whether it's justified or not, his seat's already getting a little warm. Just because, I mean, there's people who are, already kind of dissatisfied with missing the tournament in his second year, whether that's justified or not. But, yeah, obviously, if you would miss the tournament for the, third straight year, I think at that point it would be very justified in him having a hot seat, 'Cause I do think this team has the talent to be a tournament team. It's just about whether they can, put that product on the court and play like a tournament team.
Yeah, so when you look at this team, Collin, is this a team talent-wise that should have been in a tournament?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. 100%. Talent-wise, all day long.
Yeah. Kent, agreed?
Yeah, I think so, although I'd like Archie to get through a fourth year so he's got all his guys, and then he can really judge where he's at. And I think barring some kind of Will Wade-type fiasco, I think after next year he's still – Fred isn't going to pull the tournament after 3 years. I think that I think he deserves at least 4 to see exactly where he can get this program.
All right. Cole, you agree with that?
Yeah, I'd agree. I mean, look, I would love to know what went wrong with this team this year because I don't think it was all X's and O's. I think something had to have happened behind the scenes with this team. Who knows what that was. But, yeah, I mean, I'm not on I don't think Archie's got a problem. I think Archie's a very good head coach. He's obviously taken Dayton to the Elite Eight at one point. I don't think he's forgotten how to coach. I think he'll get this figured out here. Like Ken, I think 4 years is probably a good time frame for him.
Well, I think if you look at Dayton, the situation in Dayton when he got there was not great. And it took until his third or fourth year until they actually got rolling when they had all his players. And I think we went through that on a show like 6 or 7 weeks ago when we were arguing about whether it was the coach's fault or not. And I just think he needs the right players to fit the situation. And the NIT, as a fan, I could care less. But for the team, I think it's a good thing. As Ken said, you get a couple more weeks of practice. It's kind of like, if Indiana was to ever go 6-6 and make a bowl game, they'd get a whole extra 2 or 3 weeks of practice,
right.
And maybe the next year they'd win more than they'd lose.
Right.
I'm high on IU football, by the way.
Really? I mean, you would have to be high to be high on IU football. What's your reason for
double meaning there? It's a double meaning there.
What's your reason for being high on IU football?
I think we're finally going to have some good quarterback play next year. Maybe I'm a little bit of an optimist there, but I think it's been a problem for the last few years, and I think they're going to figure it out. I'm high on Penix. I think Penix is the guy.
Okay.
Here's what I heard, that everybody on the staff, DeBoard, everybody on down, Nick Sheridan, the quarterback's coach, all those guys wanted Penix to be the starting quarterback. The only dissenter was Thomas Allen. And Tom Allen, he's the head coach, so he got the final say, and it was Peyton Ramsey.
So is Tom Allen sticking with that?
I hope not. I hope Tom's learned his lesson. I think that Mike DeBoer exiting, I think that taught him a lesson. He didn't retire. He's back coaching, for God's sake. Not that DeBoer was any great shakes last year as the OC. But you know what? If anybody thinks that Peyton Ramsey is the guy who's going to resurrect this franchise, this program, they're out of their minds.
Well, you know what's sad is the fact that 20 minutes into an Indiana Big Ten tournament show, we're talking about Indiana football.
Yeah.
And I can tell you this, for all the people that are still mad that Bob Knight's gone, I am the one lone person that's still screaming, why did you get rid of Bill Mallory, Kent?
That's 22 years ago.
I don't care. You know, I remember in the mid-'80s into the early '90s, Indiana actually played some significant bowl games. It wasn't just a 6-6 Peter Pan Bowl. I mean, I remember watching them. You know, they were one win at Michigan State away from being in the freaking Rose Bowl in 1987.
Yep, those were the days.
And then they fired him.
So we can get back to talking about, Harry Gonzo and Eisenbarger and all those cats from the Rose Bowl team in 1967, I suppose.
John Pont.
Yeah, there you go.
Actually, the interesting thing is John Pont became the head football coach. He was the first coach ever at Mount St. Joe's up here in Cincinnati. And I had been out of college for a couple of years because I got hurt. And he actually came to my house and asked me to come back and play.
Really?
And he came, he sat in my living room. He could not convince me to get hit anymore. So that was that.
Nice to have a Rose Bowl coaching coach from Indiana visit the house. There's only been one of those.
Yeah, and I think there's only ever going to be one the way this is headed.
Yeah, I do too.
But, hey, the good thing is now you might be able to go to Rose Bowl if you finish second in the Big Ten. They might be able to pull that off. So when we look at this, with what they've got coming back, what they've recruited so far, what's this team look like right now for you, Kent, for next year?
I think it depends on who comes back. Like, I keep hearing things about Devontae Green and Justin Smith and going out and getting grad transfers who can shoot. And we'll see tomorrow at 8 o'clock what Keon Brooks does. But I'm kind of with Collin about at least five-star kids like Brooks. You know what? John Beilein has won a hell of a lot of games up in Ann Arbor without ever recruiting a five-star kid to Michigan. So I don't know whether it's talent that Indiana needs. I know they need a culture, but if you can find talented kids to play within the culture, I think you got a shot. I think that's going to be kind of interesting tomorrow night. The kid that I like is from Collins' alma mater, and that kid I think can play. I think he's a good culture kid. Armand Franklin is a guy who works, a guy who plays smart basketball. I like him a lot coming in.
Yeah, I don't think the answer to this is going out to get a few grad students. I mean, they need guys to build a culture, and it's hard to build a culture with one-year guys.
True.
And when you look at it, Durham's coming back. I think Durham's a really good player. I think he works his butt off. Romeo,
he does.
I don't think he's coming back. Jake Forrester, when he did play this year, showed that he could play a little bit. Fennessy, Devontae Green, if he comes back. Do you want Devontae Green back, Kent?
You know what? I think I'd pass. I think the 3-game suspension kind of tells you where his head's at and lets you know kind of that his priorities maybe don't have basketball at the top of the pylon, and that bothers me. He's obviously capable of playing really good basketball, but I think he's good enough to get you fired if you're Archie Miller. I don't think, to me, he's I don't know. Maybe we don't want to go this far because Honor Mascara Perea wasn't very talented. But, Perea was not a good thing for that program, whether he could play or not. And I think Devontae might be one of those guys at Indiana where, culturally it's going to be damn tough to build with him standing in the way.
Cole, do you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, just from a basketball skill set standpoint, I would like Devontae back. I think he showed flashes at the end of the year there that he can play better. I mean, like Kent, I've heard the rumors of, the locker room issues, involving Devontae and Justin, that they may transfer out. So who knows? If he comes back, I think Archie knows more about that than any of us do. So I'll kind of trust him on, what Devontae does. I think if Archie wants him back, he'll probably come back. It's tough to talk about stuff like that because none of us really know where the locker room's at, what the issue with it was, and what role Devontae Green plays in that. But, I think, if you would have asked me this a few weeks ago, I think the answer would have been no, get him out of here. But I think he's shown some flashes here at the end of the season that I would say yes now.
All right. Collin?
I just think that, Coach Miller really has to sit down and have a man-to-man conversation with Devontae. From a basketball standpoint, I agree with Cole. I think, if he can lock in and play like he did, last few games of the season, he can definitely help this team. I quite honestly wouldn't want to play against him, just to be completely honest. But I think that the off-the-court stuff, I think that's where Coach Miller needs to sit down and just have a man-to-man conversation and be like, look, we don't need you. And this is a conversation that Coach Miller had with me when he first called me and he first got hired. He said, look, and I respect the hell out of him for it. So, look, Collin, we don't need you. We'd love to have you. We would. We'd love to have you to bridge the gap between the players and the coaches and, your skill set and your experience and everything like that. But quite candidly, we don't need you. So you better want to be here because you're going to have to work to earn everything that you get. And that's kind of the conversation that Coach Miller, I think, needs to have with Devontae because it's going to really – Devontae can take it two ways. It's like he can have a bad attitude about it or a good attitude and take the challenge, and really embrace Indiana University again and almost take it as a fresh start. It'll be his last go-around and just take the opportunity to refocus and kind of look back on how he played, towards the end of the year and translate that into fully encompassed year next year. I think that would be the conversation that I would have with Devontae if I was Coach Miller, quite candidly.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think I trust Coach Miller to make the right decision there. If it doesn't seem like it's working out halfway through the year, I might be on here bitching about it next year. But I would say with him and Justin, they've both shown, especially over the last 5 games, with Justin not so much today, but they both showed that they are high-quality basketball players. I just would like to see them be high-quality teammates, if that makes any sense.
It makes all kinds of sense.
That's part of buying into the culture.
We'll see, and I agree with Collin. He's got to have a conversation with the kid, but he's also got to – it can't just be words. It's got to be actions, and Archie's got to be able to monitor exactly what that kid's doing somehow or another. And if he strays toward that 3-game suspension land again, then it's off with your head and we move on. There's got to be, it's got to be at some point adios muchacho, because if it's not, then you got a bunch of guys who think they can get away with damn near anything.
Yeah, and my worry here is this. I would think that the conversation we're talking about should have happened before he came back from the 3-game suspension. And I assume that it probably did.
It might have.
So.
At least I would hope it did, because that's the time to have it. You just don't let him get back and play and then address it at the end of the season. And they may have had that discussion, and it may have went well, and maybe he just made a couple mental mistakes today because he played great outside of that. And it could be something where he wanted to win the game so bad that the way everybody else was playing and shooting, he just felt like he had to do this all himself today. And he damn near pulled it off.
I do feel somewhat psychotic in that I'm bitching and moaning about a guy who went 8 for 10 from the
I know. The thing that should piss us off. The thing that should piss us off is he didn't shoot the ball 20 times.
Right.
If he gets 5 more looks at a 3, hell, we might have won the game by 6 points. But all right, let's go ahead and we'll wrap it up. Are we going to do shows after NIT games, Collin?
Yeah.
All right. Heck
We are.
yeah.
Good.
We're going to do
I
it.
think we are.
And then maybe if they go to the NIT, the four of us will fly up or just take a Greyhound bus because it's cheaper for me and Cole and Collin and Ken. And, we'll go watch the Final Four on a Greyhound bus. And what we can do is we could have Allie come film it, and we can be on Collin's YouTube channel, Kent.
Nice.
That'd be a good feature.
Admit it, Collin, I just completely blindsided you with that, didn't I?
You did.
Okay. All right, Kent, you want to tell everybody where they can find you?
At Ken Sterling on Twitter and on YouTube. You can watch me on Breakfast with Kent, also on Periscope, Facebook Live. It's all Ken Sterling all the time.
All right. Cole Hanna.
Yep, you can follow me on Twitter at ColeHanna5, and you can read my articles over on thegrillingtruth.net.
All right, Collin.
Twitter and Instagram at Collin Hartman 30, and our YouTube channel, Collin and Allie. So check it out. Good time.
All right, guys. We're going to go ahead and wrap it up. Kent, you need to get back to that Pacers game and see if you can get in and hit a few threes, get them back in it since they're down like 15 right now. We're gonna wrap the show up. I want to remind everybody that they can hear us on Spotify, iHeartRadio, iTunes, YouTube, pretty much anywhere you find podcasts, because we're on like 180 different things. So wherever you find podcasts, you can find The Grilling Truth. For Collin Hartman, Kent Sterling, Cole Hanna, I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been listening to The Grilling Truth, where the legends speak.